David Drummond, please. Oh, we're going to slide everybody. It's sort of like a talk show here.
Hi, David.
And like I said, with Tom, we will continue to have plenty more questions for Paul also, I hope from you, and we're going to try to use our time as conservatively as we can to get plenty of time for discussion. So David, we've been talking tons about media up here, and forget about that. Let's talk about China. Because, David is the person at Google who has been managing this whole confrontation with China that we've all been reading about. And frankly, I have a friend who's very, foreign policy minded, who said to me the other day that he could never remember another time when a corporation challenged a sovereign state to the degree that Google has just challenged China and the foreign policy crisis that has essentially erupted because of a company's deliberate behavior of principle and China's, complex response. So I guess the first question then is, David, is the world seeing this for what it really is? And how do you think we ought to be thinking about this, this decision that Google made to tell China, you're not going to filter your results, and if they don't like that, you might just leave entirely?
Sure. Well, when you put it that way, as an international incident, I'm worrying that we should have, maybe we should take it back. But I think we're...
some people think so.
Well, here's the way to...
Did Steve Ballmer say something like that?
Perhaps he did. But here's the way to think about it. Look, we were always uncomfortable with being in China and having to censor search results. We don't operate that way anywhere else in the world. And we said at the time when we went in that we were doing it, we made an exception essentially for China because we thought that by being there, we could be a force for openness. And help sort of the internet sort of grow there and perhaps persuade the government to sort of let up on some of the controls around the internet. Now, the fact of the matter is that hasn't happened. And indeed, things have gotten tighter and more closed in China. We said at the time 4 years ago that if that were to happen, we wouldn't think twice about reconsidering our position. And I think what our experience has been that we're not having the effect on the openness there, and that it might be better to serve, it will be better to serve our users by offering Google.com uncensored, the same way we offer it everywhere in the world, and make that available, do everything we can to make it more available to Chinese users. So this really is a statement of principle, and the thing that's important to recognize here is that internet censorship is a real problem, and it's not just China. And we're seeing it in many, many places in the world. And we've really come to the conclusion that we've always tried to push it, but it's time for governments to start getting involved here, pressuring the governments that are more repressive with speech to make them change.
Well, you seem to have had that effect on the United States State Department, but there was also this connection to the hacking of email of human rights activists. So it kind of confused some of us because it was sort of like, oh yeah, you're going to do this to us, well, we're going to do this to you. Explain the connection.
Well, here's the connection. So one thing we knew about this attack that we discovered in December is that it did come from China. It was organized, and it was politically motivated. It was very clear that the hackers were actually after the ability to hack into Gmail accounts of human rights activists who were interested in China. And then on top of that, we discovered that separate from the actual attack on Google, that there were direct attacks on Gmail users, again, Gmail users who are human rights activists in China, but also in Europe, in the United States. And that was
to be virtual attacks, or what do you mean?
Attacks meaning phishing attacks. So in other words, they would found ways to compromise the accounts. So the accounts, we discovered that people's accounts were being accessed by third parties, and in a fairly broad way, and that there were dozens of such incidents. And so when we looked at that, combined with what I just described about the climate and the increasingly closed environment, even more closed environment in China for an internet company, we just came to the conclusion that we couldn't, consistent with our values, continue to make the accommodations around a local filtered search engine. I mean, one way, a visceral way to kind of look at it is, literally, we discovered that human rights activists were being surveilled in some way. Now, we haven't pointed the finger directly at the government. We don't know one way or the other where the government's involved. But think about it, for us to then be required to censor the same speech of those same activists just became something that we weren't willing to do anymore.
Well, yeah, there is an interesting parallelism there that I hadn't thought of before, and I think that's extremely interesting. But how does a decision like that get made at Google? I mean, that was a big, big decision. I mean, did you make the decision? Did the board make the decision? Did Eric make the decision? Did Eric, Larry, and Sergey make the decision? How did it happen?
Yeah, without getting into too much sausage making, this was the management team had a lot of debate. We had a lot of debate before we went into China. You know, we had a business in China. We had R&D in China before we ever had this local search engine. We went in. We had a long debate. We talked a lot with people outside the company, and similarly here, we had a big debate about it. I mean, there are. Without naming any names or anything, but we have, there are different positions. There's still, some could take the position that it's still better to stay and serve the user because the vast majority of the information in Google is not censored. But I think the majority view, the strong majority view, and we're all unified behind this, is that now this was the time to not do this anymore.
Well, we know that Sergey, being an emigre from the Soviet Union, has strong opinions about this kind of thing. Yeah. But so who made the final call on it?
This was, again, like lots of decisions at Google, we argue about everything. We argue about things. We argue it through, and we try to rely on the data. And
did it go to the board?
I don't think I don't want to talk more about our sort of deliberation process, but this is a decision that the whole company, from the board down to throughout the management team, we're all in support of this.
Okay. Well, let's go back to media then. Or not, let's not. Wait, let's stick with this because, there's a... You want to go back to media?
Let's do this. This is fun. Let's do this for a while.
You don't want to talk about China? But, this other thing about Google that's really relevant, I think, to tie the two things together is, Google is suddenly, in its current scale, encountering sort of a regulatory pushback around the world. There are those who are starting to feel that Google's "don't be evil" mantra may be less powerful than it once was just because you're so big, you're so powerful, you're so wealthy, and it's easy to imagine that you are turning into a typical giant greedy corporation. So how can you demonstrate to us right here that that's not what's happening?
Wow. How much time do you have? No, I think, look, the China decision, I think it is an example. Look, when we went public, we made very clear to our investors that we weren't sort of the typical company, and that we might do things that you might think are crazy, but we're going to do things that are consistent with our values. And above all, we're going to continue to innovate. And I think that if you see, the various things we're doing, whether it's Android, whether it's, you see maps, and you see some of the things that we're doing that, quite frankly, are kind of cool and they're kind of cutting edge. I think our search has evolved a lot. Our ad systems continue to get better. So I think we're innovating, right? And the thing that we fight at our company, our biggest challenge, I think we spend a lot of time fighting, is something we call big company-itis, right? So we're very, very aware that with 20,000 plus employees and the global scope and so forth, that we could slow down, right? The overall force of sort of the inertia of being big can slow you down, can make you unaware of the impacts you're having in the world, have you mistreat partners, all those kinds of things. So we're very much on the lookout for it, and despite what people might think, if want to hear from you if we're acting that way. So we're definitely cognizant of the risks, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of staying a company that acts according to the values that we set out originally, and that does some reasonably good things. But is self-aware.
Well, let's sort of turn it more into a panel now and kind of continue on that theme. And I'm going to ask you a question, and the other panelists feel free to jump in. But in the media industry in particular, you command the lion's share of online advertising that magazine companies, for example, find you threatening and frequently are very critical of Google because they feel like you're not treating their content fairly, et cetera, et cetera. So, I guess another way to a question that I would want to ask you is, how do you think that media companies can thrive going forward? You know, media companies that come from the more traditional world, given the world that Google has in large part helped to create.
Look, I think media companies can and will thrive. I think that what we had in the early days of the internet was this free model, and you look, whether it was newspapers or lots of folks put content up on the web. And folks like us came along with a good way for users to go find stuff. And the partnering, I think the way through this is through good partnerships, right, between folks like us, search engines, others who do a good job with, helping people find things on the web, and the content creators who are the ones who know how to create the engaging content, the things that people want to find. And we had the original partnering model that we sort of had adopted was based on the fact that lots of content owners decided to put their information on the web for free and advertise around it, was for us to send lots of leads through our search results to companies and then help them monetize with ads. And I think that still works pretty well for lots of web publishers. I think last year over $6 billion plus, I think in revenues we shared with web publishers of all sorts.
You paid out $6 billion.
We paid out over $6 billion, and that's a lot. That's a lot of revenue that came from Google ads being shown on web publishers' sites. Now, that model, that partnering model, it turns out, isn't working for all web publishers as well as they would like. And they're thinking about moving to whether it's paid models or what have you. I think the way forward is to figure out partnerships where we can, because we're a good distribution channel, whether it's for free, whether it's for paid, and figure out ways where we can help to get that content out there and help content owners make more money, because the web's going to get a lot better, and we'll all continue to use it if content creators make a lot of money.
And that's going to apply as much to Time Inc. and Berta as it is to Joe Blogger?
That's right. That's right, and that's the great thing about the web. It has, it's diversified the number of sources, and you can get quality lots of different places. Now you get a lot of bad stuff too, but I think that there's still a very big pie for the creative industries.
Paul, does that make sense to you?
I think the key issue is not Google and traditional media, and I think we should take that off the table. Traditional media is only mentioned because they stand up and can afford to say their opinion in public, and can try to make transparent and clear what they think. But at the end, it has nothing to do between traditional media and Google. The first thing I would like to say is that I admire Google a lot, and we are a partner since a long time, and I think we have been the first partner in Germany to cooperate and open our sites and work together, and it has been a very good partnership and has been friendship that many of our people have in the meantime with Google. Having said that, I think Google is so tremendously successful in the meantime that they sort of control the market. And if somebody has 90% market share in search in Germany, which is the case as of December, it became sort of an infrastructure company. So the least that I ask an infrastructure company is that they play with open information, and that you can understand what it's all about, and that you can rely on that things which are true today will be true tomorrow. And that is not only because they have values, that is because they give transparency. That is what we really ask for, is that we have more transparency to judge ourselves that things work out well. It can't be that you are living on the hope that the same thing applies tomorrow that have been applied yesterday. If you do due diligence on a new company and find out that 90% or sometimes even 100% of their traffic is based on Google, you have a single point of failure. If they change the algorithm overnight, that company is gone, and that can't be true. So I think more transparency, significantly more transparency, is the road ahead, and I'm very hopeful that we will establish in a partnership way that Google will open and discuss with us more.
Well, again, those points are well taken. I think we're definitely cognizant of our success and the position that success has brought us. And so, but again, the way through this is through partnerships. I think we've been, I don't think we have a situation where we've been changing, our algorithm, constantly to have negative impacts on people. I think we've been very consistent. We've been very clear. I think the webmaster community will tell you that they know, how we operate, and we work very, very well with them. And we'll continue to do that. Transparency, more transparency is always good. And we're actually thinking about lots of ways to try to do that more without giving an open invitation to the people who want to wreck the search results. And there are lots of them because once they know how to game the search results, they will do it. And they will crowd out the relevant things that people really want. So it is a bit of a trade-off, but we're very open to that and want to do more because it's important that not only users trust the search results, and we believe that they do, but business partners and folks who are building businesses around the internet and for which Google, not just Google, but Bing and the other search engines provide leads. You need to trust it as well, and so we want to work with you to make sure that you do.
I think if I look at the German market, something like 65 to 80%. I have to calculate the number. They are not public. Of the leads are gone through Google. So that is a market dominant situation, and we have to ask for more transparency to make sure that our business doesn't disappear overnight. And I think if Google offers solution to that, all publishers will be happy to discuss, and not only the traditional publishers. I think everybody in the net is expecting and hoping for it.
Yeah, I think that's, and again, we're open to doing that. I would probably challenge your notion of dominance. Yes, we've been successful. There are a lot of options for people, and we don't do anything to keep users from going anywhere else. Again, you can, Bing is one click away, et cetera. Having said that, we know that we've been successful, and so I think it is our responsibility to work with you to make sure that you trust what we're doing, and we will do that.
When you are saying it's one click away, you can go there. You own the highways, and you are saying, if you don't want to drive a car, you can go by feet, and there are some more rules.
No, that's not true. You can go by another car that works pretty darn well. In the case of Bing or many other search engines.
We have a lot of topics up here we could talk about for a lot longer, but I want to hear from the audience, and there's a hand. So a quick question, and let's try to get as many voices into this discussion as we can. And identify yourself.
My name is Philip Piper. I'm with Proximic. We do the business in China with Baidu and Taobao and with All Yes and Renren. My question is I applaud you very much to the statement that you're making, with the request for transparency. Having done business with the Chinese for quite some time now, I wonder if you do expect to be back once things have changed, and knowing the Chinese, they don't take statements like you've done and the way you've done it lightheartedly. So I would be interested to see, whether you after you see solutions to what you see as a problem, you would be expecting to actually participate again in that market, which would be highly valued by the local market in total.
Well, let me be clear about one thing. We want to stay in the market now. What we've said is that we're no longer willing to filter our search engine there, but we want to stay in the market. We want to serve the market. We've asked the government to have a dialogue with us about how we could do that. So we expect to be in the market now. We expect to be in the market in the future, and indeed we hope that the government will ease some of the controls around the internet to make that easier.
And forgive me, but Philip, that's what makes this thing so interesting. They have unique leverage that nobody has perhaps ever had before. Because imagine if you're a business person in China and Google does get blocked completely in China. And say you're in Beijing and you want to know about the DLD conference. Are you going to rely on Baidu to tell you, the latest about me or Thomson Reuters? I mean, they have leverage. China cannot really afford to turn off Google. So they had certain leverage that Hillary Clinton lacks, is what I would say. What? Right?
Not going to comment on that one.
I just think that's what makes this such a fascinating confrontation. Sorry. Who else has a question or a comment? Over here.
Hi there. My name is Alexander. Do you hear me? Is it loud enough? My name is Alexander. I'm doing research on how the healthcare system is influenced by the internet. And quoting Clay Shirky, who says healthcare benefit for the internet is not machine or data, it's people. So question to Google is, what are your futures? concerning the biggest market in the future, namely health and healthcare. What is the future beyond, or ideas beyond Google Health, especially for Europe? Any ideas you can talk about?
Yeah, you're probably talking to the wrong person for that, but I know we have a lot of people working on that because it is so important, but it is an incredibly hard area to do well and to do well consistent with privacy concerns and so forth. But I'm sure there'll be more to come.
But since Thomson, part of Thomson Reuters, has done better in that than probably any other information company, how do you feel?
We have about a $800 million a year science and healthcare business, all very closely tied to what we think makes us special in the other parts of our business, which we call intelligent information, but it's really just AI and pattern recognition. So in one part of our business in healthcare, we sell to the US government, Medicaid, Medicare, the VHAs, and the state hospital systems to detect subtle patterns of fraud and waste in the healthcare system. And although there is obviously an incredible partisan debate now in the US over which system and who should pay for healthcare, the one thing everyone can agree on is let's first eliminate the waste that's in the system, because in theory that's the low-hanging fruit. In practice, it's the most algorithmically relevant part of the spend. And so we currently troll all of the reimbursement data and identify waste and fraud, and increasingly we're moving toward real-time filtering of that data to detect at the point of care wasteful health care.
That's a meaty answer. Go ahead, identify yourself.
Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. It's for Mr. Drummond. You said that you were trying to get a dialogue started with the Chinese government. I wonder whether you've had any response, or are there any intermediaries working on this for you? And did Google expect the kind of global response that's happened as a result of this announcement? And if you knew in advance what it was going to be, would you perhaps think twice?
No,
yeah,
great.
Really?
No, it's a great question. We're working on the discussions with the Chinese government are ongoing, and so that's definitely happening. You know, I don't know that we didn't know really what to expect, but I have to say that and I think we would have made the decision without any regard, because I don't think that's something you can predict. It was something that was very important for us to do for our own values, and we went ahead and did it. But we are gratified, actually, that there has been the response, because one of the things that I personally have been trying to do over the past couple years is get more attention paid to this question of internet censorship. It's a human rights issue. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948, very clearly, that most of the countries of the world have accepted that free expression is something that should be there. And the one that I have this, I wanted to read this really quick, or a subset of this. The actual Article 19 that provides of this declaration, that provides for free expression, talks about the right of free expression through any media and regardless of frontiers. And you think about that, that was written in 1948, but it seems like they had the internet in mind. And I think it's really time for governments to step up and hold other governments accountable to that. Number two, it's also a trade issue. And in this age, for a government to sort of say, this is my internal domestic media market, I have to control it, and so I'm going to trade with you on everything else, but on this, I'm not going to trade with you fairly. I'm going to keep out all of the multinational internet companies. Is just not tenable anymore, and so this needs to be on the agenda. So I think we're glad that it's bringing more attention to the issue, and that governments are going to talk to each other as a result.
One more question. Concretely, right now, David, the situation right now is you've turned off the censorship. Google is still operational in China. Is that correct?
That's right.
And is it being used at roughly the same rate that it was before?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that people are still using it, but we are hopeful that we're going to be able to operate it unfiltered. But we'll see. This is likely probably resolve itself in weeks not months.
Interesting. Okay.
Question, Holger Schmidt of FAZ.
Yes, a question to Mr. Kallen. You said you want more transparency from Google. Do you think more transparency will solve any of the problems traditional media have in the digital arena right now? And what is your strategy for the future to get more revenue in the digital arena? More transparency from Google can't be enough.
No, I think more transparency is one important first step because it leads to fair search. The discussion that will follow is a discussion about the fair share that we should get from the revenues. And the third discussion that will follow is a discussion about what kind of businesses you are allowed if you run an infrastructure business and are doing things on top, because you can commercialize on the information you have and you can limit access for others. But all that starts with transparency. So I think that is the starting point for our discussion. Does that solve all problems in internet and media? No, I don't think so, but it will be a very important contribution.
And by the way, that point applies to Facebook as well, as it's becoming infrastructure too. Jeff.
Did I answer the question?
Wait, Jeff had his hand up, and can we get him and then him? Yeah. No, first-hand seen, first-hand called on.
Follow through, Mr. Kallen. I'm glad that I think I hear some conciliatory détente maybe between German publishers and Google. But
Jeff wrote the book, What Would Google Do?
Thank you for the plug.
Thank you.
But I still sense there's a lot of hostility here, and I'm curious where that falls out. But I want to play with one phrase you just used, fair share. Eric Schmidt said in his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that Google sends publishers 4 billion clicks a month, and then it is then up to the publishers to find value in the relationship that can be created. Google is like your newsstand sending you traffic. I'm not sure I understand this concept of a fair share of the revenue that Google makes separately.
If your German is good?
Mein Deutsch ist schlimm.
May I read something to you in German?
Bitte, ja.
You know what general business conditions are?
Ja.
Allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen.
Ja, auf Deutsch.
If it comes to payment, I have to read that in German because it's different in English. And it is said, if it comes to payment, der Anteil der Summe, die Sie erhalten, wird von Google in seinem alleinigen Ermessen festgesetzt. Sie erkennen an, dass Google Ihnen nicht mitteilen wird und hierzu auch nicht verpflichtet ist, wie es diesen Anteil ermittelt und welchem Prozentsatz dieser Anteil im Verhältnis zu den Gesamteinnahmen von Google aufgrund der auf Ihrem Kundenobjekt erscheinenden Anzeigen- und Empfehlungsbuttons entspricht. Die Zahlung wird allein auf Grundlage von durch Google gespeicherten Informationen berechnet. It's very difficult.
Okay, hold on. I want a translation.
Wer kann das übersetzen?
Let me try to translate it.
Let me try to translate it.
You're going to translate it? Okay.
I just wanted to be not mistaken, so everybody can jump in and help me. So it is said that your part in what you get from Google is only in the discretion of Google. You acknowledge that Google will inform you, but is not in charge of giving you more information about the percentage and about the way it did calculate what you get. And the payment is done only on the basis of information which is saved by Google and
so you're asking for a fair share of AdSense, not of other traffic?
Yes, sir.
Just AdSense?
Yes, sir.
That puts a fence around it. Thank you.
Basically saying if there's 6 billion, how should the recipients know that it shouldn't have been 9 billion?
But it's the AdSense that's on your sites.
I can tell you that the significant majority of the revenue goes to the partner. Could we possibly be more transparent about that? Probably. Vast majority. I'm talking most of the revenue. We do that with all of our partners, and it's very clear.
What percentage?
It varies depending on the kind of partner, but we've got well north of we've got many partners at 80, some at 90.
Do the partners know which category they're in?
Many of them do.
They do.
I mean, the catcalls are nice, but it's there are a lot of $6 billion is a lot of money, and we haven't disclosed the number, but maybe in the future we'll think about doing that.
Okay, that was quite interesting. Okay, sorry, somebody over here. There's a lot of ways.
By the way,
Come on, we only have
David,
1 minute and 25 seconds.
Can I make one other point?
Yeah.
I think it's very important, the point that Jeff just raised, when people talk about fair share, about the revenue that we're talking about. I interpret most of what's been talked about in this fair share concept to mean that somehow the revenues outside of AdSense, that is to say the revenues generated, say, on the Google site, somehow need to be shared because that's being done at the expense of publishers.
Good idea.
And I think people need to understand that's just not true. We generate our revenue when someone puts in a commercial query for a camera or something like that. News queries don't actually generate any revenue because you don't put ads next to a query about Afghanistan and the like. So I just want to make that point pretty clearly.
But we are looking for amicable solutions. Don't worry. Don't worry.
So I see there are a lot of questions with one question, two questions. Maybe you ask a question, you immediately move on, and then you respond.
Make
to
it more of a
three.
statement than a question if you
Yes,
can.
indeed.
I will yield to Esther the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure, this is Esther Dyson, I mean this seriously, but to bring it closer to home, if you lose your lawsuit in Italy, are you going to move out of Italy? It's
What's
not
the
just-
lawsuit in Italy? Just
The
summarize.
lawsuit is four Google employees, if I'm right, are personally liable
that would
to be
include
putting
me.
Yeah, are liable to be being put in jail because of something posted by somebody else about a boy who was disabled mentally, and they took it off within a few hours, and now the Italian government wants to put them in jail.
Well, a prosecutor in Milan has brought a case, but we expect to win that case. It's a blatant violation of European law.
But it's Italy. You may lose. Then
Well,
what?
that may be true, but that's why there's a European Court of Justice ultimately, and we have faith in that process.
Okay.
Now that we have discussed about
I
China
have a
and
related
Italy.
comment.
Right. Now the gentleman over there.
Doug Krugman, just quickly back to China. What was your participation in the censorship? How did that mechanism work with China? And are there details about what they were censoring?
Well, I think there's a lot written about how this works. The Chinese government, of course, wants you to think that they're not involved in it. But the government makes known what kinds of things it doesn't want users to find, and you're required to sort of implement it. It's the usual things that you might suspect around, say, Tibet, Tiananmen Square, things that the government is concerned about, criticism of the Communist Party and its officials, etc.
Okay. Two further questions. You, gentleman, here.
Yeah, Edith?
Yes. Edith, you are
Okay,
asking. Okay.
it's related actually. This is Edith from Worldwide Workshop in New York. As we speak right now, millions of students in American public schools and also in European countries are blocked and censored from using Google Tools, Blogger, YouTube, etc. And that is, again, something that I believe you should put pressure on governments to really not allow that, because I think every citizen should have the right to use these tools and to actually grow and learn with these tools, especially those who cannot use it at home because they don't have technology and can only use it in school.
Just for clarity, what's the reason why they're being blocked, Edith?
Because it can lead them to bad content, right? So it's censorship. It's actually controlling, preventing, and blocking citizens in the United States, in all the schools that we work with. We work very hard to open it, but I think it's a very similar case to China, believe it or not.
I'm not sure I would equate it with China.
I want to be
quite frankly.
provocative.
I wouldn't equate it with that. But I think there are probably things that schools could do, and we could, we're trying to make it easier for them to make schools accessible without being concerned about, because these aren't adults. Right, and so I think it's reasonable to say that whether it's a parent or it's a school that's taking care of them during the day, to be a bit paternalistic about what they might find on the internet. But there are ways, it seems to us there's ways to police that, and we would hope that schools would make more access available.
Everybody has the right for a pencil.
Okay, so the
One last question.
Identify.
I would like to touch a
And your name
topic. Andreas Albert from Telegate. And question to Google. I think we all agree that mobile and the internet will be one of the key drivers for the next couple of years. And I think we all know that Google is making a lot of progress in picture recognition. Towards the topic of privacy, what I think is a risk there. I think it will be practically pretty soon possible that you can make with a mobile phone and the Google search a face recognition of everybody. Is that a borderline where you will step back to switch over? Because I think if it's possible that everybody is keeping his photograph in front of everybody and can identify all the information existing on a person in the web, that will shock a lot of people, and definitely they will not like it. Is it something where you are concerned about too?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. I think we're concerned about it. I mean, the technology is here and coming and getting better, and there are a lot of important social implications to it. And I think that before rolling that out, I think whether it's Google or anybody else, we ought to very carefully consider, and we will very carefully consider, with lots of groups outside of Google, how that could be done in a way that's reasonable. But it's right to have that concern.
Okay.
Wow, so many issues, really good stuff. Thank you, all three of our panelists. Thank you to you all.
Great. You did it really